So for those of you who are visitors, this is a slightly different service than usual. This is our annual General Assembly service. And so what is General Assembly? Every year, UUs gather from across the country and around the world to learn from one another, worship together, and make choices about the future of our faith. Also, we deepen our commitments and our relationships with one another. The theme of General Assembly this year was Resist and Rejoice. We were provided many opportunities to make a statement about how our beliefs appear in action. Today, we have delegates who went to General Assembly, and I dearly hope I have everybody who is intending to speak. I found I missed one this morning. My apologies to Mary Fenelon. And they will be giving us some thoughts about the larger event and some more specific moments of our time together.
Hi, I'm Michelle Carroll, and serve on your board, and this was my first UU General Assembly. So, wow, was that powerful. Imagine more than 4,000 UUs in a room singing your favorite hymn in rounds. Oh. And the moderator, when comments in a discussion would get heated or tense, would ask for a song, and then they'd lead us all again and reset. Awesome. It was inspiring, from Brian Stevenson's Ware lecture, Linda Sarsour, Sophia Betancourt, all three of the tri-presidents, in fact, every time they spoke. And Reverend Seneca was there, and he said, if Brother Jesus were here today, I think he'd be hanging with y'all. It was awesome. And it was challenging. There were workshops on decentering whiteness, on white fragility, and in intersectional beloved conversations. I participated in a pilot workshop where I found myself there to get better and move up the curve and better at on this topic. More often was helping the white folks in the group for whom the concept of white supremacy, cultural white supremacy, and beloved conversations were brand new terms, and helping get through the defensiveness that most of us first have on that topic. I am so proud to be a UU lay leader at this time in history, to support real action to name white supremacy culture and be in the vanguard of dismantling it, to call out racism so we can end it. This GA was an amazingly well-crafted, I do events, well-crafted 5-day event experience to help UUs see that, as you see on this bottom ribbon, no, really, white supremacy is the problem. 5 days interwoven with intelligent, passionate talks, centering and honoring minister and lay leaders of color. 5 days of learning. One speaker, the quote from Lilla Watson that especially resonated with me from a person of color, saying, if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let us work together. And the more than 4,000 UUs present raised some serious cash to support the featured organizations that were all led and represented by people of color there. And for me, it was a visually powerful learning moment on centering people of color, what that looks like. It is different. Black Lives of UU, called Blue, FLIC, Families and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children. The people in that room raised more than almost $250,000 for FLIC. And one member made $1 million pledge to match for Blue whatever we as individuals or as congregations can come up with for Blue. Yeah. Thanks. And I'm proud that we culminated GA with a yes vote for a committee to consider adding an 8th principle to our longstanding 7 UU principles, to add an 8th about combating racial inequity and the culture of white supremacy. And I'm so proud of our own, and our own MDUUC leadership. Jim Lewis was on stage on the Right Relationship team making the daily ouch oops report lesson. And if you missed Reverend Leslie's story of these hats, the ouch oops hats we're all wearing on Facebook, ask any one of us that's wearing them. And Reverend Renoir, who led our white supremacy teach-in, was on the big screen and stage for a plenary session panel sharing how race impacts her ministry and her GA experience as a queer Muslim UU person of color. And I'm so proud that our own Reverend Leslie was named to chair the UUA Commission on Institutional Change. And equally proud, she was also on stage in another plenary session as a woman minister of color, sharing our congregation's highly respected progress toward building beloved community by doing the Beloved Conversations coursework and establishing the MDUUC Beloved Conversations Alumni Network. And I'm so proud that Reverend Leslie and Linda Russell lead that important Beloved Conversations work at the national level. So much to be proud of. It was an amazing first GA. Powerful, challenging, and inspiring. I am energized and ready to work with you guys in our next steps together to be that vessel in turning the tide. Thanks.
And Sue Polgar is on her way up to give us some information and some delight about the president of the UUA.
Yes. The leadership of the Unitarian Universalist Association has passed to a new generation. The Reverend Susan Frederick Gray is our first elected female president. I gather this is not a surprise to many of you, but at MDUUC, we were honored to host and hear in the pulpit the three candidates, all female, for the UUA presidency. We recognized that our association would be in good hands with any of the candidates. Susan is a born Unitarian and a graduate of Harvard Divinity School. She's young and dynamic, with a breadth of experience in 5 different regions of the UUA in the US, let's try that, and with a deep sense of calling to the presidency. She and her husband Brian and their 11-year-old son Henry will be moving from Boston to Phoenix, from Phoenix, where she's been a minister for the past 9 years. Her leadership there was honed by working with other community leaders, opposing Sheriff Arpaio's immigration abuses, and this one touches many of us, leading the Organizing for Justice GA in Phoenix in 2012. Lots of us were there. On a practical level, Les and I found out that she knows how to raise money. But that will not be her biggest challenge. Remarkable events in the UUA presidency led up to GA. The resignation of former President Reverend Peter Morales, 3 months before the end of his second 4-year term. Over hiring practices at the top levels of the UUA. Then the appointment, as you heard earlier, of the 3 prominent UU African Americans as interim co-presidents. Former UUA President Reverend Bill Sinkford, Starr King Assistant Professor of Theology, Reverend Sophia Betancourt, and Dr. Leon Spencer, distinguished gentleman who's among his many accomplishments, he was co-author with Leslie Takahashi of The Arc of the Universe is Long, UU's Anti-Racism and the Journey from Calgary. She did that before she came to our congregation. The leadership and discernment of those 3 co-presidents led to the appointment by the UUA board of a 2-year commission that you've heard about now, the Commission on Institutional Change, with Leslie Takahashi as chair. The focus will be, and I quote, examination of the impact of white supremacy on Unitarian Universalism. So it's clear that Reverend Susan Frederick Gray is assuming leadership at a crucial time in our movement. Her vision, experience, and priorities assure me that she will live into the role with vigor, confidence, and inspiring purpose. Thank you.
This year at General Assembly, we were asked to make a change, not just to a song we love, but to our entire national social justice campaign. You see, Jason Shelton composed Standing on the Side of Love in 2004 as a response to the ban on gay marriage, and it became an anthem for our denomination. We were the yellow shirt people, the love people, and we stood on the side of love. But some people can't stand. Some felt excluded from the movement. So in the past year, a discussion was hatched, a new song was composed, a new theme has been written, and we have now been asked to answer the call of love. Some had questions, maybe questions you share. What about things like, let's stand up for justice, stand up for your rights. Standing is just a metaphor. It's a great campaign. Why are we being so politically correct nowadays? Well, I have to watch all my words so I don't offend anyone. I'm just a poet. I get it. But perhaps the most valid point as far as the song is concerned is that Jason Shelton, the composer, has specifically asked us to change it. After reflection and consultation, he believes that the intention of the mission is best served by using the new wording. He stated that he composed this song in reaction to a battle for inclusion, for equality and love, not exclusion. He has asked us to use our new, more welcoming wording. We should honor his request. Now, this leads us to the second point, that a specific population, including people with disabilities like mine, felt like they were not included in the song and the campaign. We wrote our own signs and changed our shirts to better reflect our capabilities. In fact, you may have seen this sign that I wrote at some of the protests I was at. But these signs and these shirts were very obviously different and othering, forcing us to stand out, if you will, pardon our pun, in yet another way. In fact, some people would even question me as to why I changed the motto without permission, as if by doing it, I was insulting someone by changing it to fully include everyone more fully. People with disabilities already stand out, so holding a sign that screams it feels shameful at times. I'm in a scooter, and here's the sign to prove it. If you have an invisible disability and hold a sign embracing it, it makes you feel naked in public, as if you're revealing an embarrassing, deep, dark secret. I'm disabled, even if you don't realize it, and here is my scarlet A. If you pass for having no disabilities and hold a standing on the sign of love sign because today you can stand for this hour or half hour or 5 minutes, then you feel like a fraud. By answering the call of love, you are simply saying we all deserve to love. Now, we don't have to cut out all references to standing. I get that we will still stand up for what we believe. And I will still stand as I'm willing and able. It's just that some days I'm not able to do it. And then I need others to stand up for my rights too, even if it means changing the words to our favorite song. So let's stand up, sit down, roll in the aisles, clap our hands, tap our feet, dance in our seats, or just in our imaginations, because we all have the common goal, love for all, and let's not forget that. So let's answer the call of love together.
Good morning. One of the more interesting sessions I attended at GA was Class Action, the struggle with class and Unitarian Universalists. This was sponsored by the Commission on Appraisal. Class designates the various ways people are viewed and grouped according to income, social status, occupation, wealth, education, upbringing, and culture. Classism describes the misuse of power by one class of people to oppress another class of people. Abuse of power is the evil to be mitigated. I quote from this report, "Dominance, oppression, marginalization will not reign. The inclusion of all around the table, in the sanctuary, in the work of justice, is our covenant with each other as UUs. We are recognizing the need for all members of the congregation to work together to redesign the table. Doing that work is our covenant, our promise, and our blessed struggle. As we seek to build the beloved community, we cannot erase one form of oppression at a time. Because of the interlocking of race and class, it is virtually impossible to fully disentangle racism from classism in describing one's experience. The report gives recommendations for future actions for the UUA Board of Trustees, the staff, and for congregations. It also suggests the need for obtaining better data. It proposes actions on governance and management, reconciliation, social justice, growth, power analysis, fundraising and use of resources, culture, and how we do business. We have some work to do here. I'd be happy to share this report with anyone interested.
Next, we have a video from General Assembly itself. This is a clip of Lou Baxter giving the offertory at the Synergy Bridging Worship, asking for contributions to the Katie Tyson Fund, which gives scholarships for youth to be active in Unitarian Universalism. If you don't know Lou, they are one of our youth, and they are also one of our newest board members, along with Caitlin. And they speak of their experiences last summer at Summer Seminary and how it shaped their journey.
Last August, I had the honor of attending Summer Seminary at Starr King School for the Ministry in Berkeley, California. It was one of the most brilliant and valuable experiences I have ever had. Summer Seminary taught me so many things about what it means to be a religious leader, got me started on building the skills that it takes to lead, and above all, gave me a greater, clearer sense of my purpose in the world. When Summer Seminary started, I thought that parish ministry, religious education, and hospital or prison chaplaincy were about the only possibilities for me in ministry, and that I had to pick just one vocation and stick to it. By the time Summer Seminary was over, I had realized I wanted to be a music minister, a street chaplain, and a performing jazz pianist. And I was determined to do all three of them. Every day, we gathered for lectures on various forms of ministry, where many very wise religious leaders shared their knowledge and experiences with us so that we could get to know what the work of ministry really looks like. It was truly exhilarating to be able to be a part of a group of such compassionate, thoughtful, dedicated youth who are all committed to creating a safe, joyous space for learning and community. One of the most special moments I can remember from Summer Seminary was circle worship on the last night. I was really sad to have to let go of the safe, loving space of the community we'd built, and I was preemptively missing all of my new friends already. At worship, we wrote love poems to ourselves, and we held hands and sang. It was a great way to reflect on all the big and small ways that I had changed and grown over the week, and to feel a sense of connection to my fellow seminarians and know that we would stay connected even when we were all separated by vast distances again. Summer seminary is literally a life-changing experience, giving youth the opportunity to explore their call to ministry, learn about life as a religious leader, and connect with other youth who are interested in religious leadership.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay. So, I spent the last 10 days in New Orleans. I attended Thrive. Thrive is part of Grow Racial Justice that is for UU young adults of color. We dove deep into complex questions about identity, power, spirituality, and leadership. We got to explore our roles as young adults of color in our UU movement, build relationships with one another around intersecting identities, share practices for healing and resistance, and support each other on the path toward liberation. While I was at Thrive, I began dialogues about the beauty and the flaws of our faith. As the week continued and General Assembly began, I met with friends I had made last year at this same program, and we continued our conversation. Being a young Unitarian Universalist person of color who is actively involved can be incredible and taxing, just like many other intersections in life. As I spoke to people who were newly considering topics such as white supremacy, I found that there was a common misconception that white supremacy was alluding to a specific person rather than a culture. So, an image that I found helpful when explaining this concept was an iceberg. You see, the tip of the iceberg can be a metaphor for those things that are most visible when talking about white supremacy. For example, the KKK and Nazis, whereas the larger, more insidious part remains unseen. This part of the iceberg can be likened to the systems that our country was founded on. The terrifying reality is that every single one of us was brought up in a culture that was originally founded to best serve wealthy, cisgender, heterosexual, white men. Anyone else was an other, and being other meant being wrong. Another thing that I kept hearing from my discussions with allies was about all of the thinking that was being done. Thinking about how to help, thinking about what to say, thinking about what not to say, thinking about what to do. So let me offer this. Thinking is a privilege, one that I did not get, and I will never, ever have the option to think about opting into discussions on race, or think about how I need to show up for action. My options are to act or to stop existing, so I urge you not to let thinking stand in the way of taking action. The final topic that stood out in my mind from General Assembly was a phrase that I heard over and over again. People, specifically white allies, were invited to lean into their discomfort. I'm sorry to say, but in my opinion, that is not good enough. When I was 5 years old and I was called a heathen because of the half of myself that is Indian, I was not invited gently to lean into that discomfort. At 7, when I was told that my dark skin and my thick hair were ugly, there was no urging for me to lean in. And when I was 16 years old, walking down the street with my sister, and we were approached by a man who was in a nice suit with a briefcase and told that we needed to go the F back to our country because our leader, Osama, had finally been killed, I was not gently leaning into that discomfort. These scenarios may come as a shock to some of you, but frankly, these are just a few instances, and they are incredibly mild and pale in comparison to the atrocities that our black siblings face every day. I was just a child when I was thrown into the deep end of white supremacist culture, and my options were to swim or get swallowed by those treacherous waters. So I not only urge you here at MDUUC to jump in, feet first, into the deep end, and swim with the weight of your discomfort. Because, as Lila Watson says, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Until we answer the call of action and unite with our black and brown siblings, none of us will be free, and our faith will not live on for the generations to come. And that is not a future that I want to see. So please answer the call and join us in the work. Thank you.
There's something about General Assembly that gets you going as a UU. If you haven't had the opportunity to go, there is also some advice and some ways to get scholarship money and some help. If you need recommendations at some point, the ministry team, and I know some other people who've gone before, can be helpful with that. Yeah. So I'm going to try and keep my remarks brief, because so much has already been said. If there was one theme, one idea in our faith that kept coming to mind for me in GA this year, it was covenant. How do we agree to come together and be together as individuals, as congregations, as a broader faith tradition? It may have stood out to me this year because I was on the Right Relationship team. We wear bright orange shirts, so we're easily findable. I meant to bring mine today and I forgot it. But the Right Relationship team's task is assisting and supporting people at General Assembly when something happens that causes a breach of relationship, often around marginalized identities. For example, if there is a microaggression around race, gender, or other identities. Or another example might be if there needs to be a conversation about the need for gender-neutral bathrooms or better accessibility in some space or aspect of General Assembly. That is primarily the work of Right Relationship team, is helping facilitate those conversations so that General Assembly can be a space where everybody has the opportunity to be in better right relationship, in better covenant. So my mind was very much on covenant. And I did see some things that really did bring joy to my heart. And those things along the lines of our interim co-presidents who did wonderful work sustaining our movement, our co-moderators who stepped in the event of the tragic death of our moderator, Jim Key. And those co-moderators really did loving, sustaining work for everybody present. They did a brilliant job. As Sue mentioned, the election of our first elected female president of the UUA, the President's Volunteer of the Year Award being given to Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism for their deeply spiritual work this year. And we voted on vocabulary changes. Now, vocabulary changes might not always seem like a big deal, but they are. And I will also remind you, sometimes polity moves slowly in Unitarian Universalism. So most of these votes were just a start to these processes, but it's a big deal to start them. Mary Beth already mentioned about the song Answering the Call of Love, and that was connected to a vote asking the UUA to engage in reimagining a more inclusive name for what has been called the Standing on the Side of Love campaign, in the hope that we will find a name that is more fully inclusive of people with disabilities. And in just a moment, we'll be singing those revised lyrics to that song. There was a vote, as was mentioned, I believe it was by Michelle, to have a review commission consider adding an 8th principle, encouraging us to build multicultural beloved community and dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. And there was also a vote to change the wording of the sources of Unitarian Universalism so that instead of affirming and promoting the words and deeds of prophetic women and men, we would now be affirming and promoting the words and deeds of prophetic people, thereby affirming and being more inclusive of the wisdom of those who are gender nonconforming and do not identify as women or men. For me, this is part of the beauty of Unitarian Universalism as a living tradition. Not only do we grow and change as individuals, we grow in our understanding as a larger religious tradition. We find in ways to include better, to love better. And like all covenant work, this requires some ideas that I think I was really reminded of in the Where lecture by our speaker, Brian Stevenson. Stevenson was talking about how we relate to our justice actions and to each other. Stevenson's a lawyer and a justice seeker and the author of the UUA Common Read this coming year, Just Mercy. And he spoke of the challenges of being a black lawyer in the South, both because of the barriers he faced in doing his job because of racism, and also the difficulties and injustices he saw facing those who were in the prison system. I'm very much looking forward to reading his book this summer. He urged us to be present to 4 ideas in our justice action. I will just mention them briefly, even though that really could go on for a couple hours, but we're not going to do that today. But it's worth the time. First of all, stay proximal to those who you wish to empower. Second, work to change the societal narratives that allow us to justify unjust ways of treating others. Third, stay hopeful. Stay hopeful. Can't say that one enough. And fourth, very similar to what Caitlin said earlier, be willing to do uncomfortable things. These 4 ideas didn't only speak to justice work in my eyes, they also spoke to what I saw attempted this year at General Assembly. A General Assembly that was complex and had a lot of emotion behind it. There were attempts to stay proximal in our relationships with each other. There was work to shift ideas that could use some shifting. But above all, there was a willingness to do uncomfortable things while also being truly hopeful for a joyous outcome. Today, I give my gratitude for this living tradition of which we are a part, and our emphasis on covenant, on how we come together in love, which allows Unitarian Universalism to live and grow. And I have overwhelming gratitude to covenant with you and this congregation. Amen, and blessed be.